They say your home is your safe place. But what happens when the very people meant to protect the community turned it into a battlefield? One morning, a homeowner stepped outside to find their life turned upside down. A locked gate broken, their vehicle gone, and a smug HOA board claiming it was all within their rights. But behind that petty excuse was a shocking secret the HOA never saw coming, and it would turn their little power game into a full-blown disaster. What do you do when the HOA crosses the line and you hold all the cards?
For years, the Johnson family thought they had found the perfect home. A quiet cul-de-sac, manicured lawns, kids riding bikes in the summer evenings. The kind of neighborhood you dream about when you think of safety and stability. Their two-story house wasn't the biggest on the block, but it was theirs, and it held every memory they cherished, from birthday parties in the backyard to weekend barbecues with friends. Life felt peaceful, predictable, safe. At least, that's how it seemed on the surface. The neighborhood had an HOA, a group that promised order and fairness, but whispers floated around about how far they'd go to enforce their rules. Some said they fined families for leaving trash cans out too long. Others told stories of warning letters for something as small as a faded garden flag or a slightly cracked driveway. Still, the Johnsons figured if you follow the rules, you have nothing to worry about. And for a while, that was true. The Johnsons kept their lawn tidy, paid their dues on time, and stayed out of neighborhood politics. They waved politely to the board president during morning walks and ignored the occasional gossip about her obsession with community standards. But beneath that polite smile, something darker was brewing. The HOA's grip on the neighborhood was tightening, and soon the Johnsons would find themselves at the center of a battle they never asked for. It started with one small notice, the kind of letter most people shrug off as routine. But this one carried a warning that would unravel their peace, test their patience, and reveal just how dangerous an HOA can become when power falls into the wrong hands.
The letter that arrived in the Johnsons' mailbox looked harmless at first, just another notice from the HOA. But as they unfolded it, their stomachs dropped. Violation. Unauthorized vehicle storage. Immediate action required. The so-called unauthorized vehicle? Their Jeep, parked neatly in their own driveway, behind a locked gate, exactly where it had been for years. The HOA claimed it was an eyesore and didn't meet community guidelines. But here's the problem. The guidelines said nothing about personal vehicles as long as they were registered and operable. The Jeep was both. Confused but calm, Mr. Johnson called the HOA office, expecting a simple misunderstanding. Instead, he was met with a cold, clipped voice. "Sir, the board has already voted. You need to remove the vehicle within 7 days or face fines of $100 per day." 7 days. 1 week to erase a perfectly legal part of their life. The family thought it had to be a mistake. But when they showed up at the next HOA meeting to explain, the board members didn't even let them finish. The president, a woman who neighbors nicknamed Karen behind her back, leaned forward and sneered. "Rules are rules. If we let you keep that Jeep, what's next? Boats on lawns? Rusted trucks? We have to protect property values." The room was silent, except for the sound of Karen's gavel slamming down. The Johnsons left humiliated and stunned. But that was only the beginning. A week later, another letter arrived. This time, it wasn't just a warning. It was a bill. Hundreds of dollars in fines had already stacked up. Every day the Jeep remained, the balance grew. The HOA added administrative fees and legal review costs, inflating the numbers to terrifying heights. The Johnsons tried reason. They sent certified letters citing the bylaws, proving they weren't in violation. They even hired a lawyer to draft a formal response. But the HOA ignored it all.
Instead, board members began circling their home. Neighbors whispered about those people with the illegal Jeep. One morning, the Johnsons woke to find a bright orange violation sticker slapped across their garage door as if branding them criminals. Fear turned into anger. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was about control. And the more the Johnsons resisted, the more aggressive the HOA became. One afternoon, their security camera captured something chilling. Karen herself, standing at the edge of their driveway, phone in hand, snapping photos of the Jeep from every angle. Within days, the HOA escalated again, threatening to tow the vehicle without notice.
The Johnsons called the police, only to be told it was a civil matter. They felt trapped, abandoned by the very system that should protect them. And then the unimaginable happened. It was a Saturday morning when the Johnsons heard the metallic clang of chain cutters. Rushing outside, they saw two men in reflective vests, hired by the HOA, breaking through their locked gate. Within minutes, a tow truck rumbled in, backed into the driveway, and hooked the Jeep. Mrs. Johnson screamed at them to stop. Her husband stood between the truck and the gate, demanding paperwork, proof, anything. But the men just shrugged. "We're following HOA orders." Karen herself stood across the street, arms folded, a smirk spread across her face. To her, this was victory, a demonstration of her power. And as the Jeep was dragged away, the Johnsons felt the weight of betrayal crush them. They weren't just losing a vehicle, they were losing control of their own home, their sanctuary. But Karen had made one fatal mistake. Because that Jeep wasn't just a family car. It wasn't just transportation. It was property tied directly to a police task force. And once the wrong people realized what Karen had done, the fallout would shake the entire neighborhood.
The Johnsons didn't say a word that night. They sat in silence, replaying the moment over and over again, wondering how far the HOA would go. But the very next morning, their phone rang. It was a call they never expected, and it changed everything. The voice on the other end was calm, authoritative. "This is Officer Ramirez. We need to talk about your vehicle." The Johnsons explained everything: the fines, the letters, the break-in, the tow. The officer listened in silence, then said words that made their blood run cold. "That Jeep wasn't just your family car. It's part of an active task force operation. Taking it wasn't just theft. It may have compromised an investigation." Shock gave way to dread. Suddenly, this wasn't just a neighborhood squabble. It was a legal disaster waiting to explode.
Meanwhile, the HOA kept pushing its narrative. Karen strutted around at the next board meeting, bragging about removing blight and restoring community standards. But what she didn't know was that the police had already begun digging. Every fine, every fee, every letter the HOA had sent was being scrutinized. And the break-in? That was now classified as criminal trespassing. Neighbors who once whispered now watched nervously. If the Johnsons could be targeted, who was next? And if the HOA was bold enough to cut locks and seize property, how safe was anyone's home? Tension thickened in the neighborhood like a storm cloud. Some families sided with the Johnsons quietly, offering support. Others stayed silent, too afraid of retaliation. But everyone felt it, the shift in power, the unease that settled over every block, every street. And then came the knock on the door that no one expected. Police cruisers pulled into the cul-de-sac, lights flashing. Officers stepped out, not toward the Johnsons' home, but toward the HOA president's house. Karen's smug smile faded as investigators approached her porch. Neighbors peeked through curtains as questions were asked, paperwork exchanged, voices raised. What had started as a petty fight over a Jeep was spiraling into something much bigger. And for the first time, Karen realized she might not be the one holding all the power anymore.
The morning of the hearing was supposed to be routine. At least, that's what Karen and her board thought. She strutted into the community center with her binder of fines, her stack of violation photos, and that same smug expression she always wore when she thought she was untouchable. But this time, the game had changed. The Johnsons arrived not with excuses, not with pleas, but with a quiet determination. And behind them, walking with calm authority, were 2 uniformed officers and a plainclothes investigator. The room went silent. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even the most loyal HOA members felt a shiver run down their spine. Something was different today. Karen slammed her binder onto the table. "Let's begin," she barked. First matter, removal of an unauthorized vehicle, repeated non-compliance, and outstanding fines totaling nearly $15,000. Gasps rippled through the room. $15,000 over a Jeep! The Johnsons slid a folder across the table. The investigator picked it up, adjusted his glasses, and spoke in a level, firm tone. "Mrs. Johnson's vehicle is part of an ongoing task force operation. By ordering its removal, the HOA not only trespassed on private property, but interfered with active law enforcement equipment." Karen froze. Her smile twitched. Color drained from her face. "Additionally, cutting the family's locked gate constitutes breaking and entering. Your actions, documented through both video evidence and eyewitness accounts, are now under criminal review." The room erupted. Board members shrank into their chairs. Neighbors gasped, whispered, and stared wide-eyed. The Johnsons' lawyer stood, calm but commanding. "For months, this family has been harassed, intimidated, and extorted. Every so-called violation, every dollar charged, every threat, it was all an abuse of power. And now, thanks to your reckless actions, the entire HOA faces liability." Karen had no words, no smirk, no power. The officers stepped forward. "Mrs. Karen, you'll need to come with us for further questioning." Her gavel clattered onto the table. The queen of the cul-de-sac, once untouchable, was cornered. After the chaos, the Johnsons returned home to a neighborhood that felt different. Streets were quiet, but lighter. The Jeep was returned, gleaming in the driveway, a symbol of resilience. Karen faced legal consequences. HOA policies were rewritten. Fines became transparent, and board members underwent ethics training. Neighbors found courage. Families spoke openly. Petty disputes were addressed constructively. The Johnsons strengthened their family bond and became advocates for transparency and fairness. The final lesson? Courage, persistence, and integrity can turn even the most oppressive battles into lasting victories. A neighborhood reborn, stronger and wiser, reminded everyone that power built on fear will eventually crumble, and justice, even delayed, prevails.